Even at my age, I could sense that there was something truly sinister inside this tent.
Well, don't open it then. I grew up in South Louisiana, and we did a lot of camping, hunting, and fishing when I was growing up. I remember distinctly with my cousins riding up and down a lot of the trails with a four-wheeler and things like that, just to kind of pass the time when you were out there. And we ran across some other things, you know, when we were riding up and down the trails. Other things that people left behind or used or were currently using, you know, like for instance, it's very, very common to find a duck blind when you're duck hunting, someone else's duck blind, you know. So that was never anything spooky to me, even though thinking about it at a distance, to the naked eye, if someone that didn't know what they were looking at would look at a homemade duck blind, they would probably be kind of creeped out, because these things are literally put together with like sticks and leaves and things of that nature. And sometimes they are very, very spooky looking, like where maybe an old swamp witch would live, you know, like you could really, really, really imagine that. I've never run across anybody else's campground or camping area when I've been around, but I've always taught that if I ever did find somebody else's stuff, not to mess with it. Like, never go in someone else's duck blind, never go in someone else's tent or camping area, because that's people's personal space, even though there's really no jurisdiction about what's what. You know, when you're that deep in the woods, it's nobody's specific property, but it's still, out of the common respect of other people, you stay out of their junk. So I really wouldn't explore anything that I found like that as a child. But that's not to say that other people wouldn't. And this story happens to be about a tent that a couple of guys found that they checked out, and some creepy stuff happened. It's by Wanzy Entertainment. Make sure to head on over to their channel, guys. Click the subscribe button and the notification bell. And if you like reaction videos, make sure to subscribe to this channel as well. Let's get into the reaction. True horror story about the tent in the forest.
I grew up in Bradford, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Have any of you ever heard of Zippo lighters?
Of course.
They're from here.
All right.
A thick forest surrounds the town, along with most of the neighborhoods.
Right.
My family lives sort of on the outskirts of Bradford. Of course, much like the town itself, our house was also surrounded by forest.
Right.
If you took in the scene from our back porch, you would see nothing but sprawling trees for miles.
That's good stuff, man.
I tell you this so you can gain a sense of isolation.
Right.
Out at my house, you could scream at the top of your lungs, and no one would come to help you.
Now, you see, that's a twisted way of looking at it. I grew up very, very deep backwood country. You know, most of my teen life, I lived at a house that was primarily what he's talking about. Now, we had neighbors and stuff like that, so it wasn't super rural, you know, but it was pretty deep. I had forest all around my house, and it was very common for us to just go tracking through the woods and, you know, picking berries and stuff like that. Like, very, very, very natural space. And he's right. If you're that remote, you really won't get hurt. That's kind of creepy when you think about it. We never thought about it that way, but honestly, it could have very well been bad if you would have been in a situation and needed help, you know?
This happened back in the summer of 1996. I was 11 years old at the time.
Okay.
I had a childhood friend named Marty, who was the same age.
What's up, Marty?
Our fathers worked together and knew each other well.
Cool.
He would come over almost every Friday to hang out.
Right.
Marty and I found ourselves hiking through the trees, as we often did.
Mm-hmm.
However, we were feeling a bit daring and went further into the forest than we usually did.
Ah, okay.
There was this barrier of trees that we would never go past, simply because I didn't know the area beyond that point.
Very thick,
We continued past the barrier into uncharted territory.
All right.
We eventually came upon a clearing. In the middle of this clearing was an old, disheveled-looking tent.
Mm-hmm.
Being the curious young men we were, we, of course, had to see inside.
Now, at 11 years old, that's what you're thinking, too. You really aren't thinking that anything's going to be bad. You think it's an old abandoned tent. You know, I would have probably, if I wanted to explore something like that, I would have probably yelled, you know, is anybody in there? Hello? You know, just to see. I was a relatively innocent child. Like, I didn't think anything bad was gonna happen to me. I was very aware that there were dangerous things in the woods, like animals to worry about, snakes and things of that nature, and hornets. But I wasn't really particularly scared of other people, I could say. So at that time, I don't think I would have been too worried about just checking out a tent if my parents wouldn't have told me what they told me and to stay out of people's personal stuff.
As we approached, I could feel the temperature around me drop. I'm no stranger to the cold, but this was in the middle of summer.
Mm-hmm.
Even at my age, I could sense that there was something truly sinister inside this tent.
Well, don't open it then.
A part of me was screaming to hightail it out of there, but my own curiosity pushed me forward.
Listen to your gut.
We both stopped just outside the tent, and suddenly, we were both too frightened to move any further. We were both frozen in place, staring at the open flap of the tent as it swayed from side to side.
What's in it?
The sky seemed to grow even darker since we discovered this tent, and though we were standing directly in front of it, we could not see inside.
Okay.
What happened next is the reason that I still struggle with alcoholism.
Oh no.
A dark hand slowly emerged from the tent's opening. It reached out to us, with long black nails protruding out from its fingertips. I'm not ashamed to admit that I pissed myself out of fear. The hand slowly turned and made a beckoning gesture with its index finger.
Come on in!
And that's when Marty and I heard a deep, bellowing laughter from inside the tent. I don't remember much about what happened after that.
God dang!
I just remember me and Marty running for our lives, tearing through the woods and back to my house.
Do you hear that laugh?
I do have a vague memory of me briefly looking behind me as I ran to see a tall, dark, and human figure standing just outside the tent.
Now, why would the devil be camping? The likelihood that a demon is in the woods, in a tent, beckoning passerbys to come on in, it's strange, right? The likelihood of a demon in a tent, period, is a little bit strange. But honestly, if I was a demon and I wanted to beckon people into my tent to do who knows what with them, I would at least get in a place with more traffic. Past the tree barrier that hardly anybody goes through in the middle of the woods, it's not really a tourist destination. Like, you're not gonna get a whole lot of heads coming through, you know what I mean? You have to set up something to where you can get some frequency going. That's creepy though, man.
Upon returning, Marty immediately called his mom to come pick him up.
Okay.
My mother asked us what was wrong, and we both explained to her that we saw some kind of creature in the forest. My mother ultimately dismissed our claims,
of course,
but led us in a prayer while we waited for Marty's mom to arrive.
There you go. Give you some...
Marty never came back after that, and we sort of drifted apart.
Wow.
Sadly, Marty began hanging out with the wrong crowd and began doing hardcore drugs when he was around 14.
God dang!
He ended
14?
up hanging himself in his bedroom when he was 17. As for myself,
oh, no.
I suffered from severe night terrors that tormented me for years after that day in the woods.
Wow.
I'm not going to get into what I experienced in my nightmares, but I will say that I became an alcoholic as a result.
Wow, man.
After moving far away and attending numerous AA meetings, I'm glad to say that I've turned my life around, and I even have a family of my own. I still visit Bradford every now and again to check in on my aging parents. Whenever I'm there, I always set flowers on Marty's grave.
Yeah.
I'm still convinced that what we saw that day in the woods contributed to his death. Now that I have some perspective, I think what Marty and I encountered was a demonic presence. It followed us home and proceeded to turn both of our lives upside down. There were rumors of people worshiping Satan out there in those woods around the mid to late 90s. Perhaps they awakened something, and Marty and I just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time.
That got deep and twisted really, really, really fast, man. You know, around the time when I grew up, Satanism was something that was discussed regularly. You know, I grew up in a religious household, and I'm Christian myself. And that was like the realistic approach of people being evil, right? People doing things that we didn't understand. A reasoning of a lot of what people did that we considered wrong or evil was because the devil made them do it. And now that I'm a little bit older, I think that it's a lot more complex than that. But I think Satanism is still something that's around, and where it's a little bit more commercialized now, like people actually know about it. You know, there's still a lot of a shroud around it. You know what I mean? There's people that actively you know, talk about worshiping Satan, and Satanism is, I think it's a recognized religion, even though it's not my kind of thing, not at all. But a bunch of the stories that we heard about when we grew up are basically these cults and these gatherings of people that worship Satan, summoning demons with Ouija boards and everything else. And everything that I've ever imagined and heard about haunting, you know, is a little bit less paranormal and more demonic, is the stuff that I've been scared of over time. And I've always said, like, I never wanted to go on paranormal investigations, IRL or anything, because I believe that the chance of poking the hornet's nest, supposedly, like getting a spirit angry at you and it having some sort of effect on you, even once you leave. Those are things that I never cared to experience. I'd much rather just watch content on it because it's safe. It's at a safe distance. I can analyze it. I can talk about it with you guys. I can react to it. It's fine. But I've always been really worried that something would follow me home in situations like that. And this is a story that kind of, you know, that embodies that fear and that paranoia that I've always had about it. I don't know, man. It's weird. Tell me what you think in the comments, guys. I really appreciate it. Wanzy Entertainment, though, make sure to check him out, guys, and another couple videos that I reacted to by Wanzy as well. Thanks so much for watching. As always, this is Zueljin signing off, and we'll see you next time.